Okay, hello everybody. I'm Brian, and this is AAMI News and Conversation. Today we're going to be doing a faculty spotlight, a new series that we're just starting to really highlight the AAMI faculty who are helping bring the latest and greatest of knowledge to our members and to the people who want to really stay on the cutting edge here. And I'm here today with David Nelson, and he is a faculty who has been with us for more than a decade now and has been really focusing on courses that are all about software engineering. David, you say you have 26 plus years of experience with validating medical devices and software engineering, which I think is a lot of experience in that way. And that also tells me that you've seen a lot of evolution in that space. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we dive into all that, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're working right now?
Yeah, absolutely. David Nelson, as you mentioned, I have a background in software engineering. I've been, I guess, a software engineer greater than 30 years, but in medical devices specifically, like you said, 26 years. I currently work for Boston Scientific as a software director, as part of their neuromodulation division. I've gone through the ranks of software from developing to verifying to all aspects of cybersecurity implementation, et cetera. So wide variety of things throughout the 26 years.
No, for sure. And this is a crazy important space, at least from my perspective as a news director, seeing this evolution in what people are talking about. Back in the day when we would be talking about, say, software regulation, it's really about software that lives within a device or software that's used in combination with a device. But these days, especially for you, you're talking about software as a device, which is really fascinating for me. That's something I had to catch up on. So why don't you tell me, how much is this changing? What's going on in this space?
Yeah, I mean, it's completely changed along my entire career, really, and the whole industry. As you mentioned, you have a lot of firmware back in the day where you might have a medical device hardware that has firmware chips in it that's, controlling it. And that was very, fairly straightforward, a lot of lower level coding techniques. And now, you have your completely connected integrated systems running in clouds, edge devices, AI, machine learning, a lot of new challenges. Interesting enough, the regulations have sort of morphed a little bit, but really the technology is the thing that's changed and the way that we use software. And as you mentioned, software as medical devices, they have a lot of applications without software hardware, right? Where just
Yeah.
computational information is important, taking genetics or taking information from patients and coming up with prescriptions or therapy recommendations or analyzing blood samples or just all sorts of applications where it's just the software that's becoming the medical device.
Right, right. From my perspective as say a user or a patient, I can
Yeah.
understand a little bit of this, like we have, say, companion apps with medical devices and things like that. But I understand that it's got to be more complex than that. I mean, we're seeing AI being used in the healthcare space and things of that nature. So, uh, what kinds of devices are we talking about?
Yeah, when we're looking at, software as a medical device, it's those standalone pieces of software that it does things like analyze a blood sample in an IVD, for instance, where it's understanding a disease state of a patient by analyzing that information and spitting out the results, right? Without it's not necessarily injecting anything into the patient. It's not delivering the therapy. It's just computationally coming up with the therapeutic understanding of the sample, or things like machine learning or AI algorithms running in a cloud that's taking inputs from various things to determine what a problem is with a patient, right? So you think about all of the different information you can pull in about a patient and find ways to determine what is their issue, what's the disease state. So a lot of great applications across a lot of data of millions of patients can determine, what issue has a patient has with.
Yeah, yeah, that's fantastic. I did want to bring up, as right before we start diving into more about this, that you are going to be teaching two courses coming up really soon. One of
Yes.
them is mastering software as a medical device, navigating regulations and the product life cycle. That's going to be January 21st. And the other one is medical device software validation, which you also mentioned, which is going to be February 10th. And you had mentioned when we were talking a little bit offline that both of these courses have had to kind of be updated and evolved pretty recently because of developments in the regulatory space. So, what is going on there? Why do we need to know about this?
Yeah, absolutely. The medical device software validation course, that's a 3-day full course, and it's a broad application of all of what we've talked about in the medical device software. And much of what's updated is just to be current with the technology. So a lot from a cybersecurity perspective, both pre-market and post-market, as well as just the different technologies of cloud computing and looking at how do you manage the challenge of AI and machine learning, because those things, they change dynamically as you use the product. So it's not something you can predetermine up front, validate
Mm,
it. It's done, very in a controlled environment, and then you deploy the software. It's very much often very dynamic. So the techniques and challenges and your approach to validation has changed significantly. And then, like I said, cybersecurity is across the board creating many new challenges, because it's not about just designing something to solve a disease. It's about protecting that from bad actors, and so that's just a whole different challenge that even the commercial software industry has. But
yeah.
specifically now, as we migrate technologies for medical device software into this connected space.
I think some of our viewers are probably already being like, "Oh, geez, there's Amy again. They're beating this dead horse about cybersecurity with medical devices." But it is so important, and it seems that we have seen that also from regulators acknowledging how important it is. What has changed? What has happened most recently? Are there any specific examples coming from, say, the White House?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's new laws recently passed, and 524B around cyber devices and what you have to submit and all the documentation you have to produce. There's new guidance around pre-market, specifically that was released quite recently, and post-market. And from an FDA, even though the regulations aren't changing, the way that they communicate their expectation is through their guidance documents. So these
Mm,
guidance documents are no longer thought of as something that you should think about doing. No, it's the FDA's expectation. And I've been involved in many submissions where they're absolutely looking for everything that's in the guidance they have asked for, or even to the point where I've reviewed projects or products they've rejected because of lack of controls for cybersecurity.
okay, yeah. And so this isn't coming down to just say saving an innovator time. This is going to wind up being saving costs, maybe saving your product. If you were to try to go to the FDA with something that's not ready, it might not get
Yeah,
approved.
yeah, absolutely. And one of the interesting venues that has really come to light, that a lot of commercial software companies are now getting into medical device software because of SaMD and software as medical
Mm,
devices, like the Googles and the Apples and all this. And if you're a traditional, software developer, not understanding regulations, you can cut a lot of corners, and it can be a lot of rework, or eye opening to realize it's very important to understand the regulations so you can be very efficient in still developing the software in a way that meets the regulations, versus maybe some of the traditional methods that a lot of non-medical device software developers are used to.
yeah, yeah. Now, a lot of the time we hear a comparison between medical device and that their evolution of technology and their regulation and the aircraft industry, right? I guess
Yes.
there's a lot of similar kind of risk assessment, things of that nature. You had mentioned that you're seeing the gap of amount of regulation starting to close. What's that all about? Is the gap really closing all that much, or is there a lot of work left to be done?
Um, well, before I got into medical devices, I did spend 4 years in the aerospace industry. And that's really
Mm,
what got me excited about regulated software because I learned so much about fault tolerant designs and really the quality and the safety standards from the aerospace industry. And you know, 27 years ago at the time, it was far more advanced in the medical device space. I mean, regulations in the medical device space from a software perspective were just getting kicked off, really. And yes, the gap has closed and it has moved, but I would say from a risk perspective and fault tolerance, understanding, and safety, the criticality of aircraft, those techniques, I feel that they should be more utilized in the medical device space because I think it would save a lot of our some of the issues that we've seen with recalls and some products. But definitely, it's closing. The gap is definitely closing.
I mean, that's always good news. But I'm glad we brought up your past, right? Where you used to work in the aerospace industry. I
Yes.
also was curious, what kind of brought you into this space to begin with? You obviously have a lot of interest in, assessment and risk tolerance and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny. The first job I had out of college was with a Microsoft company.
No kidding.
And
Yeah.
I wrote probably a million lines of code and probably a million bugs as well. And there was no time, no structure, no way to test any of it, right? It's just
Hmm.
send it to the consumer and let them test it.
All right.
That didn't sit well with me personally as an individual. I'm a little OCD. I like order, I like structure. And so getting into a regulated industry with aerospace was exactly what I wanted to do. And I really enjoyed that and then ended up in the medical device space. So you take a regulated environment, which is great for my personality, and the need to solve issues for patients and bring technology to patients and the lives of people just made it very fulfilling as a career to pursue. And I've been in the space, like you said, almost 27 years, and I don't ever see myself leaving it at this point.
Fantastic. I'm hoping that a lot of our viewers are getting a sense of, man, I want to learn more from this guy because he sounds like he has a lot to share. I mean, you do have a lot to share. We just talked for 10
Yeah.
minutes all about it. But I want to let everybody know again that they can hear more from you if they catch one of your latest two courses coming up. That's Mastering SaMD, Navigating Regulations and the Product Lifecycle. That's happening on January 21st. And then the other one that you had designed, which is medical device software validation, that's on February 10th, 2025. So, hey, David, it's been really exciting talking to you and getting to know you a little bit. Is there anything else you want to share before we hop off?
Now, please join me in both of those courses if you get a chance. I am very passionate about teaching. I love teaching for AAMI. It's a great organization. All the way back since 20 years ago when I took my first AAMI course and realized that, you know what, maybe someday I would be teaching. And now I am. So I really enjoy it, very passionate about it. And we're going to have a lot of fun and learn a lot if you're able to join these courses.
We'd love to hear it. All right, David, thanks again.
All right.